Sound of Metal is a drama directed by Darius Marder.
It's a story of a drummer who loses his hearing. It's called Reuben Stone. He's played by Riz Ahmed. Reuben is on the road with his girlfriend and bandmate Lou. We see them playing some gigs. Not long after this, Reuben wakes up to discover that his hearing is going. Everything's a bit muffled, so he visits the doctor, basically to be told that, he's losing his hearing and there's nothing they can do about it, apart from possibly some cochlear implants, but they're, tens of thousands of dollars and not covered by insurance. He kind of goes through all the sort of stages that you would go through in this sudden shock to your system, when you either lose, your health in some way or you lose a loved one, you go through shock and then disbelief and anger and an acceptance, and that's kind of the path of the film, as Reuben first denies that he's got a problem and then starts to learn to live with it and try and find a way to continue his life in the band. It's revealed that he's a former drug addict. He's been clean for 4 years, but Lou is obviously worried about him because having something like that happen to you, it could push him back towards drugs as a way to deal with it. So they call his sponsor, who puts them in touch with a shelter commune kind of place, which is a place for recovering addicts who are deaf. It's run by a guy called Joe, played by Paul Raci, and he is a recovering alcoholic who lost his hearing in the Vietnam War. He tries to persuade Reuben to sort of accept his situation.
So we thought we'd give this film a review. It's pretty new, so this is not really a rediscovery, it's a review, because in this country at least it's just been released on Amazon Prime, and we often do Amazon Prime films. And we also thought that from that we would do a themed month, so we're kind of doing a themed month out of this film. Although weirdly watching it, so the theme that we're going to go on to do is kind of, sounds of metal, I suppose you could call our themed month. We're going to look at other films that feature metal or rock music or bands kind of the kind of
bands
key
as
there.
the lead characters.
Bands as the lead characters. Well, interestingly, we came up with that before we'd even seen this film. Strangely, watching the film, the metal band that exists in the film is only really there at the beginning of the film, and then kind of dissolves, and it becomes a story about Reuben, played by Riz Ahmed. And so watching it, I was thinking, actually, what we could have done is actually a theme month on films about deaf people, because it's also, I noticed, it's actually this week is Deaf Awareness Week in this country. Anyway, goes from the 4th of May to the 9th of May. And I was thinking, there's a number of other great films out there about deaf. Top of my head, The Miracle Worker and Children of a Lesser God with William Hurt. That's a really good film about deaf people. Also set in a deaf kind of school as well, similar to this film. But we haven't. We're actually going to go off and do a month of films about music.
There's a bit of a tenuous link.
A bit of a tenuous link indeed, but that's fine. We've got some interesting films. So come back, obviously, for our first one of that. But for now, we're just going to review this film. And I really enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was really, really well done. I think the central performances by Riz Ahmed and Olivia Cooke, who plays Lou in it. Amazingly, they're both British, playing very, very convincing American accents. I mean, Riz Ahmed is someone I've watched for, I first saw him in Four Lions, and he's someone that I've kind of followed as his career's gone on. I think he's an incredible actor, and he just kind of keeps getting better and better in every role he does. I'd never heard of Olivia Cooke, but she does it perfectly well as well. Yeah, I thought it was a strong film. There were parts that to me, I think the beginning of it kind of all kind of happened very quickly, and before you knew it, you were like at this commune. I think for me, the lead performances and the sound design.
Yeah.
There's a moment in this film, that first moment he wakes up. Well, no, he's at the merchandise booth before going on stage. That's right, and he hears this kind of this ringing, and the sound drops. And of course, we as an audience hear that. We hear this kind of muffled sound, and then the next day he wakes up and he's by himself. His girlfriend's asleep, and he's trying to kind of he's trying to wash out his ears, and he's blowing, and it's such an anxious scene, and he plays it so well. I just feel it kind of before you knew it, he was in this like doctor's office having his ears checked. So for me, that part ran through quite quickly.
Yeah, I was expecting more, of seeing them performing.
Yeah.
But yeah, very quickly we get into. I mean, I guess why not? That it's not about the band. It's about his hearing loss, isn't it? So I guess there's no point in it's to be assumed that they've obviously played a lot of gigs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's never really established whether it is his drumming and playing in the band that has caused the hearing loss.
No,
but it's certainly possible. But yeah, it's more about his journey of once it's happened. His sort of the shock and the disbelief and the denial and things like that. After he's told not to play any more gigs and avoid any loud noise, he then goes and plays another gig because he doesn't know what else to do. He can't believe that this is happening, and that's all he knows. He just the band is their life. They live in an Airstream sort of motorhome thing. That's their home, and that's what they travel to. To all these gigs in. He doesn't know any other life at that time. It's not like he can go home and give up. Their life is on the road at this time. And I think obviously, he never really says, but he's probably worried about falling back into addiction as a way of coping. And obviously Lou recognises that and quickly takes charge of the situation, so to speak.
Yeah, he's a recovering. He's been clean for 4 years. He's a heroin addict, and yeah, that's kind of it's spoken about in the film. And he is nervous about. He's clearly an addictive personality. He's very aware that could possibly take hold again. I mean, and again, there is moments. I mean, like I said before, there's moments at this commune that there's a kind of a part, and it's not really a spoiler to say this, but there's a part where he learns sign language being the language that deaf people use. But again, it kind of 1 minute he's like very against it, and then it cuts very quickly to him kind of...
There is a bit of a time jump, isn't there?
Big time jump, because he's very kind of like against it, and he's fighting himself, and he's trying to work out where he's going. And then the next thing, he's like playing with the kids. There's there's an interesting moment actually where he's with us with children, and they're listening to, I think there's a break dancer, and you can hear the beat in the back, in kind of this muffled beat that you would hear. I mean, you obviously don't hear sounds, but you can feel the beat. Obviously, when you're watching a film, you can't feel it in that way. In the cinema maybe, but when you're at home, it's slightly different. Anyway, you can hear it. You're hearing a muffled sound. Anyway, he takes this child outside because they don't want to listen to it, and they start messing around on the slide. They start doing beats on the slide, and then the next shot, he's like playing outside with all these kids, and they're laughing, and he can sign language himself.
Yeah.
And you're like,
I mean, I guess that's the moment where he like makes a connection with this kid and sort of has a realization that maybe his life isn't over, and there is he can still hear music in a way and can connect with other people even though he can't hear. So but there is then there's a sudden jump and he's signing and everything.
Yeah,
so
to me it felt too quick. It felt like they missed out in terms of storytelling. It kind of missed out development, I thought, and that for me was the only thing that let it down. Apart from that, like I said, I think that the two, I mean, all the performances in it are really good. I think what's really, really interesting, I mean, that's another thing. I think a lot of films that, when you're touching on something like heavy metal or extreme metal or something like that, you often find they get it wrong. Whereas here, you feel like they actually got it right. The sound they play is a very kind of, it's a very kind of driven, beat heavy kind of extreme. It's quite slow actually. It's not like it's not like thrash or death or anything like that. It's quite an experimental metal sound that they've got going on. It reminded me a bit of the band. There's a band called Today Is the Day. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that. And in fact, I think the music of their band, so the band in it's called Black Gammon, and their music was written and performed by Margaret Chardiette. I think that's how you pronounce her name, and she's in an experimental group called Pharmacon, which is not for the faint of heart. So I've heard one album by her, and that's Bestial Burden, which is an incredible in-your-face mental record. But so she did the music for this, and it shows, and I think that's really good when you get someone who obviously knows that scene, and it puts you in it and you feel like you're there, and I thought that was really good. I mean, it's an interesting, because the title is Sound of Metal, and I think there's possible references to near the end of the film, some of the sounds he starts to hear, which are quite metallic, I think it's an interesting title because you kind of expect to see more of that world. I recommend going out and checking it out if you can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like you say, all the performances are great. I mean, Paul Raci, he actually was the child of deaf parents, so he well versed in sign language. So he's had a few roles over the years, but this one, yeah, particularly good. He's been nominated for Best Supporting Actor and various awards. I mean, obviously the film, the Oscars recently won Best Editing and Best Sound Design, and without a doubt, it does excel at both of those. Like we've mentioned, particularly the sound design puts you right in Ruben's head a lot of the time, exactly what he's hearing, and then will bring you back out so you can hear what's actually, what the sound actually is like. Yeah, apart from that odd time jump that, first you're like, oh, that's weird, but you go with it. I mean, I found myself at the end because I was so invested in his story. I wanted to know more. I wanted to find out what happened to him next, because it doesn't end on a cliffhanger as such. But I just found myself wanting to know where his story was going to go next, what he was going to do. But that's a testament to to the writing and the performances that I was invested in the story and the characters.
And it's also got the French actor who turns up briefly in the film, Mathieu Amalric. I think that's how you pronounce his name, maybe. It's almost like a nod to The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is also about someone whose life changes dramatically, and he's featured in that. He plays the lead in that role in that film. I think it's a really unique film. It's different. It's definitely different, and it does something slightly interesting that we don't often see. I mean, it's a drama at its heart, and it tells the story of a man struggling with something that's changed in his life, and we all have to. I mean, that's what it's about, really. It's about a change. Whether that's something dramatic, physical, or health wise, or something just in general. We. Even as kind of almost as mundane as a career change, it's something that we all have to go through at some point in our life. We want to change direction, and I think just looking at that from this point of view is really interesting. I think it's done really well. So I'd be quite interested to see where the director goes next, what he does after this. But we saw it on Amazon Prime, which in this country you can see it for free on Amazon Prime. I imagine you can see it in America or elsewhere around the world.
I think it's on Prime in the US as well. And I think it was released in the cinema there late last year. In the UK, it's out on the 17th of May in cinemas. Obviously, that's the date that they reopen. So, I mean, if you are able to go to the cinema and you feel safe enough to do so, then I would highly recommend checking it out in the cinema because, yeah, just for the sound alone, it'd be much more immersive and, impressive in that sort of setting. So, and also, just the cinemas need it, don't they? They need people to go to get bums on seats. So if you can, then definitely it's worth a trip.
I actually watched it with headphones on because I wanted to I thought, I wonder what, because I was watching it and I was like, I mean, my TV, it's pretty good sound, but it's not great. So I chucked on my headphones and it actually sounded, it kind of amped it up a little bit and made it quite interesting. So I think in the cinema, it would probably be a really interesting experience. I think the sound design is Oscar worthy, as of course it did win of that. So do come back and join us for our month of Sounds of Metal, or Sounds of Rock and Metal. We're not entirely sure exactly where we're going to go with it, but it won't be anything like this film. We've chosen there's some comedies in there, there's some dramas and something like that. We're just kind of a bit of fun with it. It's quite tricky because there's not a huge amount of films out there that cover metal or rock, or it won't be strictly metal, it'll be kind of within that area. So that was Sound of Metal, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button there and don't forget to push the bell for notifications. There's other videos to check out over here. Come and find us on various social media platforms and join us again soon for another video.